President, in accordance with Rule 40(1), I move that the debate be now adjourned. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin moves an adjournment motion. We'll deal with this motion first. When I put this motion to members, I would like members to note Rule 40(1) and Rule 40(2). If the motion is passed, the debate on to note the subsidiary legislation would come to an end. We're talking about 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation, including those scrutinized by subcommittees in relation to the places of detention, designated places of the Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, Hong Kong Port, and Hong Kong Ling Road closed area. Other subsidiary legislation is related to other pieces of subsidiary legislation. On this debate on the adjournment is of a very narrow scope. Members should refrain from talking about irrelevant matters or talk about the contents of the 13 items of this subsidiary legislation. Under Rule 40(1), members should not mention anything irrelevant to the motion. And also, members should not repeatedly refer to irrelevant matters or repeat tediously the arguments made by the member himself and other members. I would enforce the rules very strictly and ask a member who has done this to stop speaking. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin, this is the 10th year I'm here as a member. This is the first time I invoke Rule 41 to adjourn a debate. The meaning of this adjournment is that filibustering in this council is getting more and more serious. It's bordering on craziness. But the previous one, there's the motion under the Criminal Procedure Ordinance. Basically, it's not controversial, and there are no divergent views in the community. And still, we have spent 14 hours. We spent 14 hours on the motion. And now, motion debates are subject to filibustering in the general sense. This rule to debate motions is now a notorious tool for filibustering. But now to vindicate this rule, I would like to invoke this rule to reduce the possibility of filibuster. I know the opposition camp would argue that why do you know that I'm going to participate in the filibuster? What if I do not speak? I hope I'm wrong. I'm proved wrong. If they do not filibuster, they should not speak or reduce the number of speeches in this motion debate. And I hope this motion can be dealt with very quickly, so that this council can resume to a normal state. Thank you, President. I'm not going to filibuster. That's all I want to say. Will those members who want to speak please press the button? And the motion before us is that the debate on the motion should be adjourned. Do you want to speak, Secretary for Security? Mr. James Toh. Oh, I didn't know whether the Secretary for Security would speak or not. Having heard Mr. Wong Kwok Kin's speech, I just find the logic rather confusing. This is ridiculous. How much time had he spent in considering moving this German motion? He speculates that the motion to note the subsidiary legislation and debate has become the subject of a filibuster. So first question is, how many members have spoken on this motion? I'm the first one, I believe. Oh, so Mr. Holden Chow is the first one to speak. Was he guilty of a filibuster? If he's not, then I'm guilty of filibuster. I only mentioned 3 or 4 points about the drafting problems. Now he wants to adjourn the debate. So what's the purpose of the motion? Is to note the the different items of subsidiary legislation. If members would like to see some improvements in the closed area, in the port area, and we would want to talk about the drafting of the order. I hope Mr. Wong Kok Kim would listen carefully to Mr. Holden Chow's arguments. And you know, in this, there are pro-establishment members in the subcommittee. You may say that the chairman of this subcommittee have said everything that needs to be said, but he did not read out the entire report. So those who are watching this on television will not know what has happened, and even from the pan-Democrats from different parties may have different views. For example, they may have different ideas about the facilities in the port area and whether there are sufficient parking spaces. But Mr. Holden Chow only mentioned the matter, what the matter is about. So Ms. Sari Lee moved the motion. Other members are required to note the motion, but members have different matters of concern. Those representing the North District may have a different concern from me. Some may be concerned about convenience, arrangement for drivers or for passengers. So different members have different concerns. If you want to put this to a stop, you want to adjourn the debate. So you are actually saying that Mr. James Toh is filibustering. Well, what I have said are matters of substance, all required to be answered by the government. So I do not want to ask the president to rule on whether Mr. Wong Kok Kim has imputed motive to other members. But actually, he moves this German motion solely based on the imputed motive. This motion debate is about the adjournment. We are not supposed to talk about the original motion. Members who are concerned about Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, Hong Kong Port will not be able to speak on those matters of concern. They can only talk about the adjournment. But if this adjournment motion is passed, successfully passed, the result is that there's no more discussion. You have to be fair. Other members have not done anything, have not spoken. Ms. Alice Mack is going to speak after me. She's from your party. Are you trying to say that Ms. Alice Mack should not speak? If every one of you states their position that you are against filibustering, then you are actually filibustering yourselves. So I don't want to speculate on why Ms. Alice Mack would like to speak on the motion. And he also refers to the criminal procedure motion, criminal procedure ordinance. But that different areas of law would attract different views, and different members have different concerns. That they have to decide whether to speak on behalf of their constituents and to what extent.
Now, if you say that you have to adjourn this debate for fear of filibustering. Well, only one member has spoken so far, and for the energy efficiency labeling scheme, did someone from the pro-establishment camp filibuster? You had closed. You have more than a dozen members who have spoken. So, would you admit to having been filibustered? Well, you filibustered so as to abort the discussion of the subleg or motions that followed. Now, pro-establishment camp may not want to comment so much on legal aid, and I don't know about the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge motion, but you cannot say that people from different backgrounds and were representing different people here, if they want to speak on the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge motion, you ask them not to speak, and then you may impose a ban on all pro-establishment members as well. Now, for those who represent the business sector, who represent tourism and trade, you should not speak, and everything from the administration is correct, then we will then become the National People's Congress. Wong Kwok Kin, I don't know whether he's going to run to be a local delegate to the NPC, but I think he is turning this council into NPC. I don't know whether all members from the pro-establishment camp who have a stake in this motion will refrain from speaking. So, or is he asking that nobody speak on this item? Anyone who speaks is helping to filibuster, with the exception of Alice Mack. President, some members said that we should pay more attention to the energy efficiency label scheme. I would not accuse you of filibustering. I could only suspect that you were so doing in order to prevent discussion on the motions that followed. Well, but I may say that, well, you're concerned for the environment. Pro-establishment members may also care for the environment, and you refrained from speaking, and the pandems would be talk about the environment in front of the TV, and then the public may have the impression that you don't care for the environment. So each member can decide for himself whether and how much to speak on a certain topic. And even Mr. Wong Kwok Kin said that this is the first time he has moved a motion to adjourn in his 10 years experience as a legislator in order to vindicate or do justice to this motion to adjourn. He is in fact using this motion to adjourn to disrupt all normal procedures. Members may want to speak for a few minutes or 10 minutes on this based on their concerns of their constituencies. Mr. Ray Chan, call for quorum, please.
議員請返回座位。
Members, please return to your seats. Mr. James Toh. Madam Deputy, people talk about their original intentions. So for this motion to adjourn by Mr. Wong Kok Kin, I think he should think about the purpose of our entire debate. This is a piece of subsidiary legislation. So he moved a resolution, and it's now being debated. But even after it's scrutinized, any member can actually take this chance to oversee the work of the government. So the House Committee chairman would make a neutral motion that she has taken note, and at the end of the debate, we do not have to put it to the votes, and members can speak on this piece of subsidiary legislation. If the purpose of adjourning the debate is to stop members from speaking, I do not know why whether the pro-accession camp wants to extend this practice to every item, or they are only pinpointing the Hong Kong China Macau Bridge. Is this motion to adjourn politically motivated? Please go on. I thought you wanted to speak. Is he politically motivated? Do you think that our concerns on the HZMB are too sensitive? I did not want to doubt his motivation, but he had not made any motions to adjourn except this one. So are there any specific reasons? Are there political concerns on co-location arrangement which led to your decision? Why did you try to? Why are you trying to stop members from speaking? Mr. Holden Chow made his speech, and I was only the first speaker to go. There are 4 main clusters to the Democratic camp, so at least you should wait to see whether those Democratic members are repeating themselves. That is the intention. If you do not wish to speak, that is fine. So if you do not wish to go on record, that is your choice. But for the energy efficiency labeling scheme, you chose to speak. So it's entirely up to you. But since you moved this motion to adjourn, you are trying to stop members from speaking. If you want to narrow or stifle the right of speech at LegCo, this is terrifying. You are trying to stop people from speaking. You are negating the concerns of a Legislative Council member. And this item has been tabled by the LegCo president. I want to remind Mr. Wong Kok Kin that for this motion to adjourn, I have to cite what Mr. Jasper Chang, the former DAB member and LegCo president, on what he said about filibustering. Jasper Chang is vastly experienced, and he said the spirit of one country, two systems include the presence of an opposition, and 2, the opposition can negate government motions or postpone them. And number 3, he said the opposition can use any means within the rules of procedure to delay or negate the government's funding proposals or motions. So that those were said by an experienced pro-establishment member about filibustering. Filibustering is one of the important elements of one country, two systems, because there wouldn't be any filibustering at the National People's Congress. And now, are you trying to turn LegCo into another National People's Congress? I doubt your motivations, Mr. Wong. Ms. Elsmack. Mr. Ted Hui. Thank you, Madam Deputy. I want you to rule whether Mr. Wong Kok Kin's motion is valid. A few weeks ago, we talked about the resolution on co-location arrangement. This issue cited Rule 88, and his motion was deemed invalid, and his motivation was doubted. Mr. Wong Kok Kin, I'm not done yet. He said he wanted to prevent filibustering. That's why he's moving this motion to adjourn. So these pieces of subsidiary legislation is irrelevant. You made a point of order, but the president had approved the motion to adjourn. The president made his decision. I invite you to make a decision, Ms. Asmat. Madam Deputy, I think we should have some classes about rules of procedure. Mr. Ted Hui, the President already made a decision. I would not rule again on the decision already made by the President. Please sit down. Ms. Asmak, I think we should have some courses on rules of procedure. Mr. Ted Hui, I already heard what you said. I'm not asking you to overturn the decision of the President. I ask you to rule Mr. Wong Kok Kin's motion. This is not a point of order. Ms. Asmak. And I think this is really hard to watch. They are always talking about rules of procedure. So Mr. Wong Kok Kin's motivation was doubted, and they asked Madam Deputy to rule whether Mr. Wong Kok Kin's motion is in order. I'm speaking not to filibuster. When Mr. To spoke, fortunately we had a break. If he was asked to speak for 15 minutes, well, I would have worries about him. I want to tell the watching public why Mr. Wong Kok Kin wanted to move this motion under Rule 40(1) and why we have to support it. I'm sure the pro-exception camp would support it. What is the difference between us and them? This morning we already debated a motion to adjourn. We already voted, and in the prior co-location motion we had a few votes as well. Wong Kok Kin made this motion because our purpose is to stop the filibustering. This is different from what other members did before. Every time we moved a motion to adjourn, each member can speak for 15 minutes. If the opposition has more than 20 members, that would amount to 6 to 7 hours or more for each motion to adjourn. And the proceedings of LegCo would be delayed. And after 15-minute rounds for the original motion, they can speak again each for 15 minutes. So each member should have 15 minutes, but after moving a motion to adjourn, they would get 30 minutes. So this has become a tool for filibustering. But when you look at the records, this morning, the opposition moved a motion to adjourn under 40(1) on criminal legal aid. Not all opposition members would support it. They would play specific roles. Their motions to adjourn were not genuine. Sometimes they were genuine, but sometimes they just wanted to filibuster. So we genuinely want to adjourn the debate because we don't want the proceedings at LegCo to drag on endlessly. So some people might wonder why we are making such move, because order at LegCo is being disrupted. So you can say that we are in a war. So we need to react to a strategy from the opposition. That's why Mr. Wong Kok Kin moved this motion to adjourn. But we are only adjourning this debate. We hope that such adjournment will not affect other agenda items, including the motion on labor rights proposed by Mr. Jonathan Ho in July. We are yet to discuss it. After that, after we adjourn this item, we can proceed normally. Some people never admit that they are filibustering. The opposition always wants to refer to our recording, and that's exactly what I want you to do. You should look at what was said after 7:20 p.m. Just look at what Dr. Joseph Lee said last night. He said he could not finish the 15 minutes. He said his purpose was filibustering, but he would not use up the full 15 minutes. So I have great admirations towards Professor Joseph Lee, because he has the guts, unlike many members. If you don't want to be accused of filibustering, don't do it. So Professor Joseph Lee made it clear that their only purpose was filibustering. If this is so clear, we must react and come up with a strategy. We cannot allow the filibustering to go on forever. That's why we have to make such move. Wong Kok Kin was only, he only learned from you. He was merely returning the flavors. So this is a case of double standards. Well, when you see Mr. To being so agitated, so some people were very fired up, and they looked very tense. Well, we know what each other's doing. So I want to take this chance to tell the public about the differences between us and them. Some members have not spoken with logic. Mr. To said Mr. Wong Kok Kin represented the FTU, and we wanted to turn LegCo into the National People's Congress. How can LegCo become the NPC? This is illogical. No, I'm not very educated, and I don't quite understand your logic. So I would not use up my full time slot. And some of my colleagues asked me to speak later instead so that we can rebuke, but I don't intend to do so because Hong Kong and LegCo will lose out. So I don't want to go into a quarrel with them. I just want to tell the public that we are against filibustering. We don't want members to stand in the way of our proceedings. That's why we would support this motion to adjourn. Mr. Ray Chan, please remain quiet. Thank you, Madam Deputy. Mr. Wong Kok Kin made this motion to adjourn under Rule 40(1). What was he trying to adjourn? If the motion is adjourned, what would be the consequences? Is he adjourning the 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation, including 4 relating to the commissioning of the Hong Kong Dry Macau Bridge Hong Kong Port, and the remaining 9 include fixed penalty, road traffic regulation. I would not read them all out. The impact is that speeches prepared by members cannot be delivered. Mr. Wong Kok Kin said he is trying to justify Rule 40(1) because it was a tool for filibustering by the pro-establishment, by the pan-democratic camp. So he is trying to use Rule 40(1) to stifle our chances to speak on these 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation. Madam Deputy, I thank you again for sharing with us the opening speech of Mr. Andrew Leung. So I think these statements were prepared well ahead, or else you cannot be that efficient. Madam Deputy, Mr. Wong Kok Kin said he's trying to justify Rule 40(1) and that there's value in it, and that is to combat filibustering. I want to justify something else. And there is a saying that DAB is disgraceful, but Mr. Wong Kok, but I think the FTU is even more disgraceful.
Please rule whether this is offensive. According to the rules of procedure, a member should not use offensive language. And I think that if you use the word shameless is offensive. Are you saying that a LegCo member is shameless? No. I was just asking everyone to listen to this debate and make a judgment by themselves. I'm not saying that any member is shameless. I would like to remind all members that you should not use offensive language against any member. Ms. Claudia Mo, what's your point of order that you want to raise? Well, he's speculating on people's motive. He said the president and the pro-establishment members have colluded to do something. Mr. Chan, please continue. No, I did not say that the apple polisher from the pro-establishment camp and the president have colluded. Well, maybe they share the same ideas. Actually, what he has said is not justified. He's saying that this debate is not meaningful. I've heard the speech of Mr. Holden Chow. He read out the speech without any spirit. And then he also talked about his own views after reading out the report of the subcommittee. So I asked for a quorum count so that members can return to listen to his views. And if you think that these views are frivolous and you are forced to do this, he could have just stopped after reading out the subcommittee's report. Every member can speak on this motion to take note of the relevant items, although you may think that there are different motives. For example, you don't support the setting up of a select committee on C.Y. Leung's case, but you did not support the proposal, but you would join after one is set up. And now, since this motion is moved under our rules, everyone would want to speak on those items of subsidiary legislation, including Mr. Holden Chow. Well, other pro-establishment members may not be able to follow what the proceedings. They did not know what they will be voting for or against under the motion moved by invoking the Rule 40(1). Well, this is a naked assertion that I would like to stop you from speaking. This is really outrageous. You can invoke other grounds, but now you have spelled it out. You don't want members to speak, whether you are good or not good, whether your speeches are justified or not, whether you are prepared or not, or whether you are filibustering. Well, I don't mind admitting that I'm filibustering. My manifesto, my election platform says I'm going to filibuster to fight against evil law. But some pandemics are filibustering, some are not, and whether we are filibustering or not, we are entitled, we have the right to speak. And now, in this extraordinary time, we don't have a majority for GC members. So you can pass any motion under Rule 41. So they can stop speeches on any item. So you can just speak on Rule 40(1), and that's it. But we are not able to speak on the relevant subsidiary legislation. The pro-establishment camp did try to stop us from speaking, but never in the way suggested by Mr. Wong Kok Kin. When we wanted to speak on the 5-district de facto referendum, the 5 members planned to speak, and the pro-establishment camp planned for the meeting to be aborted. And now he didn't like Mr. James To's speech, and he's saying that Mr. To was having a difficult time, and I could not understand his speech. Maybe it's a problem with my comprehension. Well, even if he had made a very bad speech, but that's just one member, I certainly can do a better job than him. I have all the speeches ready. according to you, you said because of one member's speech, you are not happy with that member's speech. You want to silence all members. You are just like Hitler. You want to carry out the Holocaust just because one person was saying something that you did not understand, and you move this motion under Rule 40(1) so that all members will be denied their chances to speak. And it said it was not controversial, the community did not pay attention to these matters. Well, we haven't spoken. You have no idea what we are about to say. Point of order? Mr. Dr. Lo Wai Kwong. Well, in his speech, Mr. Chan Chi-chin criticized other members by referring to Hitler and the Holocaust. This is most inappropriate. Are you saying that they are Hitler? They are like Hitler? Well, they are even they're even meaner than Hitler. Is a metaphor. Just like Mr. Julius Holt, I was saying that you are silencing us. That is a Holocaust of the right to speech. You make a ruling, Madam Deputy. Mr. Chan Chi-chin, please say clearly whether you are saying that Mr. Wong Kwok-kin is more atrocious than Hitler. This won't count against my time, right? I was saying that Mr. Wong Kwok-kin did not like the speech of a member, Mr. James Toh. He couldn't understand him. He thought he was talking nonsense, and he moved this motion under Rule 40(1), and I would say that he was trying to stifle all of us. So he was even meaner than Hitler. And I also talk about Holocaust. It's a metaphor. If Dr. Lo Wai Kwok said it's not okay, I can withdraw it.
Silence, please. Mr. Ray Chan has already told us that he made a metaphor and that he was so willing to withdraw the term Holocaust. And I think from time to time we do use metaphors in our speeches. And may I remind members to refrain from using offensive language. Mr. Michael Look, a point of order? Yes, a point of order. If you allow this metaphor, then this will distort our rules of procedure on languages. On language, members can use. Does that mean that I can use all sorts of offensive metaphors? Hitler started the Second World War, caused the death of tens of millions of people, and he has been nailed to the pillar of shame. He is a criminal of war. So this is a very offensive metaphor. Madam Deputy, I hope you can make more accurate ruling. Mr. Michael Look made his point very clear, and I heard Mr. Ray Chan's clarification. He said that Mr. Wong Kwok-kin's motion to adjourn would deprive members of their rights to speak, and he said that it was a metaphor and he was willing to withdraw the term Holocaust. And may I remind Mr. Ray Chan that although in our rules of procedure there is no mention of the use of offensive metaphor, but since the use or the metaphor involving Hitler would cause cause a lot of controversies, please just confine to using the word stifling the opportunity to speak. Yes, I will not use this metaphor involving Hitler anymore. Well, only one member has spoken on this motion, and yet Mr. Wong has invoked 41 to deprive other members of the right to speak. Isn't it too much? Now, if you ask me how many members are going to speak on this, I don't know. Nobody responded to my question on how many more members are going to speak. There may be 0, there may be 3, or maybe a dozen or so. Now, if they make repetitive arguments, the chairman or the president will make a ruling. Or maybe some members felt that past rulings by the chairman, president was too lax, and therefore Mr. Wong has resorted to moving a motion under RoP 41 to stop us from speaking, to gag us. So whenever he so wishes, he can speak as much as he likes. If he doesn't want to, then he can invoke this motion to gag us, and he can use and invoke RoP 91 to stop us from speaking. So do you want to scrap RoP 49E2 as well, so as not to allow such motions? Now, for our members who support this, do let us know your justifications. You talked about wasting Council's time. We are spending 15 minutes on this motion under 49 or 41 instead of discussing the Hong Kong to Macau Bridge subleg. Is it better to spend 15 minutes on Mr. Wong Kwok Kin's motion under 41, or to spend 15 minutes on the 4 items of subleg related to the Hong Kong to Macau Bridge? Which one is more effective use of time? I think people can tell. The President has made a ruling. Although there are 13 items of subleg, well, the debate will be divided into 2 sessions. I'm not too happy about that, because for the second group of subleg, only 15 minutes is allowed, and we cannot comment on all the items we would like to. But don't allow us to talk about these 4 items and not the other 7 items. So they use filibuster to stop filibuster. So they can do it they want, or even if they are robbing Hong Kong people, it's out of good intention. They amend the RoP, it's out of good intention. They represent good, we represent evil. They are angels and we are the devil. It's strange that I could refrain from laughing after making such remarks. So for some of what Mr. James Toh said, I disagree. And Mr. Charles Mok talked about the energy efficiency label, and he vented his feelings. He claimed that the pro-establishment members were filibustering, but I won't agree to such remarks, because after all, it is their rights to comment on any subject so long as they have not breached the RoP. And people may, the media may said to me that I use RoP 41, so we allowed them to cause the motions to lapse. In fact, you don't really have to filibuster, you just vote them down. So how can we defend the amendments to the RoP? We cannot use these materials to be roadblocks. Perhaps this is wishful thinking, because the pro-establishment camp has all the powers in their hands. It all depends on whether they're going to use them. They have the right to stop the scrutiny period of subleg. They don't want us to amend the motion. In fact, we don't have the right to amend the motion. We're just using our last chance to comment on the subleg before its passage. We are only making known our views here, and yet even this is not allowed by the pro-establishment camp. Mr. Ho Chi-fung referred to the point of motive. Although I have only a minute or so left, I have to comment on that as well. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin moved a motion under 41. His motive was to counter filibustering. He wanted to gag members. I think that was based on a wrong motive anyway, a motive that is not in line with the RoP. Of course, the President has made a ruling and the Deputy, Madam Deputy would not make another ruling. Now, this is extreme times. Before the by-elections, the pro-establishment camp or the majority, well, they can do everything. They can pass everything. Either it's by RoP on 91 or 42. They can abolish an office. They can even stop members from speaking sincerely on a topic. We wanted to put on the rest on handset what our views, but they even stop that. Well, we must not allow the pro-establishment camp to abuse its power excessively. We must oppose. Ms. Claudia Mo. I'm afraid the lectern is too tall. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin moved a motion under RoP 41. He said that it was for countering filibustering. I was really shocked because I've heard from a radio program that he was against the abuse of filibustering. That was a very knowledgeable statement, because when you are against the abuse of certain thing, well, the original motion itself may not be bad. It may even be good, but most certainly it is something neutral. You should not abuse your power. Power itself is certainly neutral. You may have or may not have the power, but those who have the power should not abuse it. But this is not what Mr. Wong intends to do. He was speculating that members may filibuster, and filibuster is evil, according to Mr. Wong's views. I think his logic may not even pass Politics 101. Filibustering is a right of members with the purpose to oppose draconian laws and evil policies. It is a last resort. Perhaps the administration may be colluding with the so-called apple polishers. There is suspicion that there is collusion between the two parties. So for those who want to defend the rights of the community should stand up and filibuster to delay the materialization of such things. Now, do we have democracy in Hong Kong? Well, a little bit. It's not that we don't have any democracy in Hong Kong. Many of us are returned by one person, one vote in geographical constituencies. That's a fact. But we've said this a number of times. We have more votes but less seats than you are, thanks to the current election system. This is a well-known fact. You tell us not to abuse filibustering. For me, filibustering is not even neutral. It is a good thing for the benefit of the public, we have to resort to this as a last resort. I have seen some silly political banners on the streets to oppose the abuse of violence. Are you stupid? Violence is a bad thing, and for the police, they are not using violence but force. This is about semantics. They don't understand what is a figurative speech. He claimed that Hitler is offensive. What about talk about Mao Zedong and Cultural Revolution? Back then, if you said anything against Chairman Mao, you would be reported by your neighbors because they were in the majority, and there was no need to go through the court, because back then people were masters of the country, and people could just catch you and make a scene of you in the streets. And Mr. Wong Kwok-in surprisingly said that his move was to counter filibustering, and anyone who would speak after him would be filibustering. And then I saw Miss Alice Mack stood up and say, and she came back in a rush, and today she's wearing her glasses, and she rushed back to the council to filibuster. Well, I feel aggrieved on behalf of FTU, because they are not those who don't have the best interests of Hong Kong in mind, but probably they would like to steal the limelight. They would want to ensure the value of their existence. They cannot live under the shadow of another party. This will not do. And in the last electoral election, you lost. Even Wong Kwok-in could not return to this council.
Well, could you please come back to the point? Yes, I agree that I have slightly digressed. Never mind, I will continue. Well, we have, you don't allow us to speak under various rules. This morning, I thank Mr. James To very much. Wong Kwok-in said that he did not understand James To. I have with me a big bundle of paper. No matter which rule James To referred to, I knew. Please hold there. Mr. Roy Kwong, call for quorum, please. We have... Yes, call for quorum.
請議員返。
Members, please return to your seats. Ms. Claudia Mo. Members, please return to your seats. Mr. Stephen Ho. Ms. Mo, please continue. Wong Kwok Kin said that he did not understand James Ho. I fully understood him. Wong Kwok Kin said that perhaps because of his level was low. But I am a teacher, so I can confirm that his level is really low.
Because he asked the question, he answered it himself, and I'm responding to him. He's not able to tell us. Yes, Ms. Mo, please wait. I think that is offensive. I think we can just debate issues. There's no need to use such offensive terms. Ms. Claudia Mo, in accordance with Rule 41(1). Now, if a member, it shall be out of order to use offensive and insulting language about members of the council. That's 41(4). So, members, when you consider your choice of words, please do not avoid or being provocative. Now, I don't want the debate to have to be terminated often just because the members use provocative terms. And now, for this occasion, I will not rule at this point whether the term is offensive or not, but members, please avoid using provocative terms so we could continue with the debate. Thank you. Please continue. No, I just find it strange. Wong Kwok Kin said 3 or 4 times that he couldn't follow James To's speech, and he questioned whether his standards are low. But in a way, you are also insulting Mr. James To. Now, he's been a member for over 20 years, and he said he's been a member for 10 years. Well, I don't see that myself. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But he's insulting Mr. James To. Now, Mr. James To is a lawyer. He's a qualified lawyer. And then he said he couldn't understand what he's saying. So isn't that insulting? What do you think? Are you still counting my time? We are debating whether it's offensive or not. Ms. Mo, please continue. This is not the subject of the debate. Now, I hate this. I can't stand this person. I don't remember his name. I don't remember what his name is, this person who interrupted just now. Now, do you wish to speak on the subject? Otherwise, I will have to ask you to stop. Can you please continue? Okay. I would like to criticize Mr. Wong Kwok Kin. He said he's against filibustering, but he won't repeat what he said before. He said he's against abuse of filibustering, because filibustering is a good thing. It's this last resort for members to oppose harsh, unreasonable rules. But abuse is another thing. Abuse, if you protest that people are abusing, using private sentencing or torture, whatever. Now, torture itself is, of course, abuse. So I'm not being offensive to Wong Kwok Kin. I'm just saying that we need to be clear about what we're saying. It's important. Now, you say filibustering is a waste of time, and then we're using electricity here, we have light and everything. But it's a Thursday morning. Why are many of you so emotional? We're just talking about noting a report. It's not, is in a strict sense, debate. We're just talking about noting subsidiary legislation in relation to the Hong Kong Joy Macau Bridge. Why do you have to be so emotional? It's strange. Why you're all so worked up? And I think that really harms the perception of this council. there's no need to be like this. You know, we can be polite and courteous. Like you're always sitting there with a smile on your face as if nothing's happening. So we can give people a sense of calm, and it will be fine. Now, you mentioned filibustering. You said, I said earlier, you know, you have enough votes, so it doesn't matter if we filibuster, they still have enough votes to pass motions. Yes, it's true, but I have to repeat what Mr. Ray Chen said. I want to clarify once again. I want to say this loud and clear that we are the angels. Anyone, the bootlickers and those in the pro-establishment camp, they are evils because they don't care about the well-being of the people of Hong Kong. What about this Hong Kong Joy Macau Bridge? Already there's integration with the mainland on all fronts, and there will be a high-speed rail. So why do we need this Hong Kong Joy Macau Bridge? It's outrageous. It's just to entrench this sense that Hong Kong people are Chinese. Now, so you have all these white elephant projects, all these major infrastructure projects. So force Hong Kong to be integrated with the mainland. Okay, I finish on that point. Coming back to filibustering and say it's pointless because at the end the result's the same. Still, filibustering is well-intentioned. It's not ill-intentioned. Has anyone ever brought out, say, something, a Chinese a geomancy book or whatever to read out? In other countries, people read from Bible. It was allowed. I don't know if it's still allowed now. I don't know if they've changed the rules in the U.S. But anyway, here we're talking about evil rules and laws. And why won't you let members who are here to serve the public, why can't they do that? Because they want to especially show that these are people who just yes men to the government, who want to show up the ridicule of their voting intention. Now, filibustering is only 5 years. I've only been members for 4 years, just 4 years. You know, I have to emphasize just 4 years. It has to be hashtagged if it's text message. Now, we have achieved something. The cyberspace Article 23, I have to commend Ray Chen again. Almost, he single-handedly managed to bring down the cyberspace Article 23. Now, if that bill is so important, why wouldn't the government come back? You know, Greg So's even left. So if there's such an urgency, there's such a need for this cyberspace Article 23, then the government's claimed at the time we definitely needed it. They needed it desperately. Don't filibuster. But there was filibustering and the bill was withdrawn. And now the government has never come back on it. So it's telling lies all the time. And also another achievement with filibustering, the medical registration bill. Ms. Claudia Mo, this is not a debate on filibustering. No, Kwok Keen moved this motion under 40(1) is because he wants to stop filibustering. I'm trying to tell you filibustering is a good thing, so why it's not appropriate? No, it's not the subject. Please continue. Okay, for medical registration ordinance, it's come back now, but we have managed to secure improvements. Now, last time, if that bill was not right, was fine, then you could have just opposed the filibustering. The government could have come back with this bill, and Dr. Pierre Chen would dare not oppose it. But anyway, but this time round, the bill has seen improvement, and that's the achievement of filibustering. And now I have to correct myself too. Now, you know, why do you need to be so worked up early in the morning? We're just talking about noting a report. It's not something, you know, so important that we don't have it, then Hong Kong will fall. No, it's not that. So there's no need to be worked up. And I must thank Mr. Holden Chow. He's the #1 C.Y. Leung's fan. Some suspect whether he's also #1 Carrie Lam's fan. Anyway, it doesn't matter who's the chief executive. Whoever is the chief executive, you cozy up to him or her. I was just teaching people about this term groppling, chief groppler, really cozying up to the authority. Now, even Holden Chow complained just 650 parking spaces, that's too little or too few. And then Holden Chow also mentioned 650 parking spaces. The vehicular flow is between 9,000 to 14,000, supposedly. But then in the latest government documents, it says for the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge, traffic flow would reach 35,700 to 49,200, close to 50,000 vehicles. So all of a sudden it jumped one-fold or two-folds. That was 2035 estimate, but we are now in 2017 only. Dr. Kwok-Kaki, I speak in opposition to the motion moved by Mr. Wong Kwok Keen. To adjourn this debate. Now, it's an eye-opener this morning. We see what the pro-establishment camps are doing. They're resorting to all means. They want to turn this council into the NPC on the mainland. We just clap our hands, or we don't even need to clap our hands. We just sit here, sitting still, and then several thousand people sitting here waiting for the state leader to finish his speech. Well, it won't be long, I think. I think they want Hong Kong to be turned into an authoritarian city. If anyone in this council stands in the way of their bosses, then they will, stop them. That's why we need to have this fight in this council. Why do we need to use the rules of procedure? You can see who are sitting over there. It's so tough for them. Now, they thought they would just come to meeting and then go out and then wait till meetings finish and wait for instructions from Beijing or from the higher up, and that's it. And Dr. Kwok-Kaki, are you speculating the way the business is conducted in this council? No, I'm not. If you're imputing motive, no, I'm not. But if you try to claim I'm talking about you, there's nothing that can stop that. If I, don't try to think that you're the one being targeted. Anyway, it's tough for them. Originally, just waiting to do their homework. That is to mutilate this council, so all evil laws can be passed here. It doesn't matter how much they will harm the core values of Hong Kong. The rule of law, equity, fairness, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, they could slowly take this all away from us. And then they would be abiding by the order of those highest above. So they are now doing it step by step. First, they're emasculating this council. They are, first there was the interpretation by NPC Standing Committee, then disqualification of members. Now they want to change the rules of procedure. So Hong Kong people here can see all this chaos. Now, what do you mean by wasting time? If you sit here and do nothing, keeping the seat, you don't speak the truth, you don't serve the people, then it's a waste of time. If you don't want to be a member, you don't have to. Say as one. If you don't want to speak, you don't want to listen, you just want to go home, go home. There are plenty waiting to take up your seat, so if it's too much for you, you can leave. The liaison office and the Communist Party have lined up a whole gang of people, so don't worry, there will be someone taking up your seats. So, under the current system, the Hong Kong government calls all the short. Now, in the judicial organ. We see the government taking out prosecution using the court to suppress others. Dr. Kwok, can you please come back to this subject? Yes, I'll come back. Why do I oppose Wong Kwok Kin's motion? So we need to defend this. We need to stand firm. We must not give up. We must not allow the pro-establishment camp any chance to deny members right to speak on behalf of the people in this council. Next week, there will be amendments to the rules of procedure to silence this council. They're almost there because they have enough numbers. And this is a distorted council that does not represent the public. And so you just rely on your numbers. How good are you?
If you can go through direct election and you get all the seats and you can amend the rules of procedure, then I will call that smart. Now you are trying, this is a golden opportunity for you to take away our power, and you are not feeling shameful about that. So in face of such a great oppression, Hong Kong people are suffering, and we don't even have the chance to speak out here at this electrical. Wong Kwok Kin said that we are filibustering. In this council, we are trying to impose unreasonable systems. Elderly people are waiting for universal retirement protection. A lot of people are waiting for more elderly homes, hospitals, and other facilities. In terms of system, we want the government to be more accountable. Don't do anything that harms Hong Kong people. Well, we want to do something here at the electrical, but we are called or deemed filibustering here. And for the 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation, those include the notices in relation to Hong Kong-Macau Bridge Link Road order. And this white elephant costs over $15 billion, and there is an overspending of $10 billion, and Hong Kong has to share out the cost as well. We want to make some comments on such a phenomenon. This is Hong Kong people's money, and it's a hard-earned money. We are talking about over $110 billion. If that amount is spent for universal retirement protection, that will cover a lot of people. Are we not sacrificing Hong Kong people's interest here? We should have voiced our concerns in relation to these laws, and these concerns are well-founded. Hong Kong-Macau Bridge has this link road, and we are not just talking about a link road. And all roads from mainland go into the heart of Hong Kong. And Hong Kong mainland laws will be enforced in Hong Kong as well. And Hong Kong people are bewildered. They will be settling the score afterwards as well. There will be imprisonment sentence. There will be harsh penalties, just like what they are doing on the mainland, provoking trouble and picking quarrels and subversion and so on. Hong Kong must defend ourselves. When we see that in Beijing, several million Beijing, Hong Kong people are driven away from the city, from their city by the, well, they are asked to go away or leave in 72 hours, and the bulldozers are there already. And the young children in the kindergartens were in these very problematic kindergartens. They were given injections, they were administered medicine, and there were even suspicions of sexual assault. So nobody was taking care of that. Well, Dr. Kwok, how is it related to what the subject matter is. It seems that there isn't enough members here in the council. Dr. Kwok Ki asked for quorum call. So we have a quorum. So Dr. Kwok, please continue. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin said that if we are to take note of these subsidiary legislation, this is a waste of time. A lot of people would like it to be a rubber stamp, or like to be voting machines. They want everything to be passed as one. So any discussion is considered a waste of time. So it would be best, say, to them, if the chairman asks, is there an objection, then everything, no objection, then everything is passed, and then the meeting can be concluded in half an hour. Well, that's good. You are paid $100,000, and all you need to do is to sit here for a while. But Hong Kong people dislike that. They don't want the electrical to be turned into a voting machine or rubber stamp only. Madam Deputy, in this report, there are a number of livelihood issues here. We are talking about road traffic ordinance, criminal proceedings on fixed penalties and so on. All these have to do with people's daily lives. Shouldn't we be discussing all these livelihood issues related to Hong Kong people? Can't we speak on them? Why? Why do you call this a waste of time? Today, before long, given that we have this pro-establishment camp members and boot-licking people, electrical will become a rubber stamp. Before long, the rules of procedures will be changed, and its function of monitoring the government will be taken away very soon. When we know that the CCP would like to have comprehensive jurisdiction of Hong Kong, and when Mr. Li Fei arrived, some young children were there to greet him, and then he was also instructing a group of civil servants on the 19th CCP session. When all these is happening, the one country, two system will come to an end very soon, that we know. So at the council, we must not budge an inch. We must stay our ground, and we'd like to fight for as much as we can. It's always the majority which rules. This is a distorted council, and very soon when we take the matter to a vote, you can envisage that the pro-establishment members, well, all of them got 0 votes, but when they push the button, then the matter will be concluded. You can invoke 40(1) any time. You have enough votes. So as long as you press the button, then nothing could be discussed. So maybe in the future, you will be invoking a lot more 40(1) to adjourn the discussion. Sometimes I think to myself, we want to take note of the subsidiary legislation in relation to Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. It's so embarrassing. It's the mainland's project that's been delayed, and there are state-owned enterprises involved, and workers' lives have been lost, and there's been delay, there's been overspending. Hong Kong people have to shoulder the cost. Maybe it gets too embarrassing, so maybe the mainland authorities would have told you, let's not discuss this. Let's cover up everything. And then everybody will feel very happy. So if the council is relegated to such a state, say for example, if a pro-establishment member like Wong Kok-yin could press a button and then ask for adjournment of issues which involve unreasonable projects, unreasonable costs, and so on. Well, this is something that we can't accept. Madam Deputy, Hong Kong is getting worse. 13 plus 3. Well, 6 lawmakers' qualifications have been taken away, and Hong Kong is no longer the Hong Kong we used to know. My friends told me recently, they came here, they have emigrated earlier. They said that Hong Kong is getting more corrupt, more mainlandized, and there is no longer one country, two systems to be seen. And Hong Kong people are getting more numbed by the situation, and they don't know what to do. Maybe the happiest people are the pro-establishment camp members. Well, in the council, we can't do much here. The pro-establishment camp members will be defending the government's policies, and they can do whatever they like as a result. And this very outrageous policy address, that was passed. So we all know what's happening here. But what's more important is that we should not budge an inch here, and we should tell Hong Kong people that we would not let the pro-establishment camp win. So I speak against Mr. Wong Kok-yin's motion. Mr. Kenneth Leung. Thank you, Madam Deputy. We are discussing Mr. Wong Kok-yin's invoking RoP 40(1) to adjourn the debate. Let me turn to speak first on some objective facts. Madam Deputy, you know that in this council, no matter which political faction you are in, you can't impute the motives of other members. Whether one member speaks or otherwise, moves a motion or otherwise, whether it is an act of filibustering or not, we don't have to impute their motives. Let's try to take a pragmatic approach. And as we all know, well, filibustering is a neutral term that happens in parliaments overseas. That also happens in Hong Kong, and in any democratic legislature that happens. Now, I want to quote an example from yesterday. In Australia, the Victorian state. Well, that happened yesterday in a discussion or debate of the parliament. They discussed a piece of legislation or bill in the state. Well, whether euthanasia should be supported. Well, we do have such a concept in Switzerland and the Netherlands. Well, they spent 100 hours to debate this bill on euthanasia, which is very controversial on, say, the morals aspect, legal, and so on. Ultimately, that bill was passed. They spent 100 hours on it. Should it be considered as filibustering? Well, it depends on the content and the quality of the debate. We should not casually impute the legislators' motives. Now, Mr. Wong Kok-yin invoked 41. Now, maybe this member thinks that the debate is going to be frivolous and facetious, so he is invoking 40(1). So I don't think if that is the case, there is no need for us to discuss whether there is filibustering going on. The president has said that these 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation should be taken note of. There are 2 sessions, and for these 13 pieces, And we can speak at most 15 minutes at each debate. So we can roughly estimate the time that will be taken to discuss these 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation. Why I am against Mr. Wang Kwok-kien's motion based on 40(1). In the past few months, the government has introduced a number of bills and subsidiary legislation to the Council. Well, I must cite some examples to illustrate why we have to have this debate to take note of this subsidiary legislation. Let me cite 2 examples. I'm not going to go in depth into why these subsidiary legislation is complicated or not. Let me spend, say, 2 minutes on this.
First, 4A apology bill commencement notice. Well, it's not about the legislation itself. I remember the chairman of the subcommittee, the Bills Committee, was Mr. Holden Chow. Well, what is about this apology ordinance? Is it going to be based on facts? I remember there were 4 to 5 meetings. I'm not going to go into the details of the body of the legislation itself. The commencement notice is very important because in the Bills Committee or the subcommittee, we asked the Department of Justice to educate the public, to do more publicity campaign, to speak to Bar Association, Law Society, and chambers of commerce and directors to see what is actually embodied in the apology ordinance. So far, has the Bar Association, Law Society conducted any education and promotional activities? Because that is very important. That's very important to a lot of professionals. So, have you done your work? Do people understand what is this ordinance about? And then 4C, Inland Revenue Double Taxation Relief and Prevention of Fiscal Evasion with respect to taxes on income, New Zealand Amendment Order 2017. It's LN 154 of 2017. This is a legal notice. There was no subcommittee set up for its discussion. Well, if this is an agreement related to CDTA, Comprehensive Double Taxation Agreement, well, it's rather standard because it follows the same template. But what is this agreement with New Zealand about? Allow me 2 minutes to say that. This is to remove paragraph 4A of the first protocol in the agreement with New Zealand. That means, well, the exchange of information will not be automatic. That means in the future, well, we will automatically exchange information with New Zealand. Do you know what actually goes on in this? Well, if you are a New Zealand national, your information will be automatically exchanged with the authorities of New Zealand. Of course, if you don't have, if you are not a New Zealand national, then that is no problem. But if you are a tax resident or if you're a national of New Zealand, then this is something to do with you. So, do the public know about that? About the change in the agreement? And it is not just about New Zealand. There are 39 agreement parties with which we have signed the CDTAs. So now I move on to another matter. Why one should not use filibustering to label these motions. If we spend 5 hours to debate on a non-binding motion, is it meaningless because it is non-binding? If we use 30 hours to debate on changes in the rules of procedure, if we use 50 hours to debate on a piece of legislation, what about them? There is no standard you can apply. If you are subjective, you say that, well, you spend electricity, energy, and time that could have been used elsewhere. Well, we're in an age of artificial intelligence. We don't need the venue for people to actually sit down. All you need is a terminal in front of you, and you just press some buttons, and you don't have to even travel to go to a meeting. There is a bill, and 70 members will be sitting in their respective office, press a button to indicate their voting preference. Is it perfect? I don't think so, because that is rather extreme. Let me quote you another example. Some people say that, we're not very environmental friendly. We pollute the earth. Say, for example, we turn on the lights, we use computers. Some extreme green groups may say that, well, actually, the thing that is most non-environmental friendly is human beings. So in order to protect the earth, there shouldn't be any human beings on earth. Is it the case that in order to enhance our efficiency, legislators should not actually come to the chamber to have a meeting and just sit in front of a terminal to press buttons to indicate their voting preference? I do not agree with Mr. Wong Kok Kin's motion under Rule 40(1), because there is a time limit. A deadline is set for this matter, and it will not affect progress of other motions. In relation to the 13 motions, some of them will affect livelihood. Say, for example, road traffic driving licenses amendment regulation 2017 LN 157. It's about changing or renewing your driving licenses. Well, nowadays the Transport Department will not send you any notification, and you will have to fill in a form saying that I haven't used my car during this period of time in relation to vehicle license, so please impose as a charge on me. But the public need to know. I've only used 10 minutes. I so speak. I do not support Mr. Wong Kok Kin's motion to adjourn. Thank you. Mr. Leung Yiu Chung. Madam Deputy, just now Mr. Wong Kok Kin moved this motion to adjourn. His reasons are, well, I may misunderstand him, but I stand to be corrected. I tried to jot down his points as far as possible. We said that he's been a legislator for about 10 years. It's the first time he invokes this rule to move a motion to adjourn, because he wants to set everything back on the right track and not want to waste any more of Legco's time. I would like to reply on these points. The first one, to set everything back onto the right track. Yes, that needs to be done. There are a lot of things that have gone astray, but our idea of the right track will be very different. What has gone off track? This council follows rules left by the British. And previously, the members were appointed by the governor. So when motions were moved, there was little debate, because members would follow the instruction of the administration. So there was little debate. When a motion was moved, there were a few words said, and then it would be put to a vote. And that was the convention. But times have changed. from the end of 1990s, well, actually starting from the 1990s, there were more and more elements of democracy introduced to the council. So the situation has changed. When the administration moves a motion, you can't guarantee that there are no objections, because with democratic elements, members who represent the public would express their comments in accordance with public views. So there will be more and more objections or differing views. So time spent on meetings will be longer. That is inevitable, and you can't deny that either. Some people say, well, have we lost efficiency? I think it depends on where you slice it. When it comes to a council, are we talking about efficiency, or should we focus more on monitoring the administration? If we were like the council in the old days, members were appointed to follow the will of the administration. Of course, there won't be any monitoring of the work of the administration, and there was no need to say anything, because everything would be going through the motion. Members would just vote yes, whatever the administration said. But now we have more democratically elected members. We do criticize the functional constituency, saying that these members are not really democratic. But still, they said that they were returned by voters. And sometimes members from the FC would say, well, we have to be accountable to our constituents. So we have an additional function of monitoring the administration. How do we do it? Not just by voting. We have to voice our views, express our stance, and that is also a way to monitor the administration. So setting everything back onto the right track. It is to change the old ways when there were no criticisms directed at the administration. We have to represent the public. We have to express our views, whether it's for or against, in relation to proposals of the administration. That is the right track. However, contrarily, Mr. Wong Kok Kin's right track is the exact opposite. We ask for more time and more opportunities for members to comment on the administration's policies. However, what Mr. Wong Kok Kin wanted to do is to stop us from doing that by moving this motion. So he wants the council to regress back to the old days. Just follow the will of the administration. Just press the button to say yes. I find that regrettable. Mr. Wong Kok Kin, you are not a member of the functional constituency. You are geographically elected. So voters send you to this council for what? To be a rubber stamp? To be a yes man? No, I don't think so. They would like you to speak for them, to speak their minds. And you said, no need, don't waste time. Well, just endorse whatever the administration gives you. Kenneth Leung said, well, if that is the case, there's no need for us to have this council meeting. We just go back to our home and press a button by staring at the computer. Well, in my ward office, I encourage my staff to work from home. They can or have a home office. Perhaps instead of a home office, we have a home council, a family council to be exact. You just do everything at your own home. You don't have to come here to debate on matters or to discuss things. But is it still a council? Do you know what the purpose of a council is? Is to discuss, to debate. Of course, it will take time. But you want to cut that off. You don't want to give us any time or any space. Then there won't be any discussion, and there won't be any debate, and there won't be any council. What will it become? That we don't do anything. We just press to support government proposal in the future. Is it something that we want to see? That is another thing. Well, apart from setting everything back on the right track, I want the council to go back to normal. Madam Deputy, call for quorum, please. Dr. Fernando Zhang asks for quorum call.
請議員發
Members, please take your seat.
「會議繼續。
Mr. Lang Yuchong, please continue. Can I start, Madam Deputy? Yes, please continue. Kok Kin mentioned putting things back on the right track, and he also wants things to resume normal in this council. What do you mean by being normal? Because if it's normal, then it's strange. You are adjourning this debate, so we don't need to debate it anymore. So is that normal? Is that back to normal? So I don't know what you mean by being normal.
如果
If the legislature is there to debate issues, then we should give the legislature ample opportunities to do so. So if you have an adjournment on the discussion, how can that be considered a normal operation of the council? I am bewildered. And if the legislature is to operate in a normal way, then ample opportunity should be given to members to express our views. This is about members taking note of the subsidiary legislation. That is to say, we take note of this matter, and then what happens afterwards? Nothing will happen. For those members who haven't joined one of the subcommittees to take a look at these legislation, then they didn't have the chance to take part or express their views. So this is the last chance for them to do so. If this is going to be adjourned, then the members would not have the chance to speak on this pieces of legislation. So if you ask every member to join every subcommittee, then that's also unrealistic, because we have so many subcommittees looking at so many different pieces of legislation. Maybe you say that we have other chances to express our views. Say if members don't join the subcommittees, then we can make use of this opportunity to voice our views. Why shouldn't that be done? Some members have also said that, well, he didn't understand what Mr. James Toll was saying. Then let's not listen to members' views. Well, you can't say that because you just don't understand a member's points and you're asking all members not to speak. Is this the normal order of the council? I think this is very ridiculous. You are also belittling and insulting the council. You are not giving respect to the council, and you're not treating the legislature as a legislature. So you want to bring back the council to the right track. I don't agree that that's the approach. I don't understand. We said that we should not waste the council's time. Well, I think it's all a matter of opinion as to what constitutes a waste of time. You, should say up front that you are against filibustering. Many members said that filibustering is a waste of time at the council. I find it very strange. Well, Madam Deputy, you should be familiar with the rules of procedure. When you are chairing a meeting, and when the member speaks, he should abide by some order, and that is to say, if what he speaks is unrelated to the subject matter, then he will not be allowed to speak. And if it is a frivolous and vexatious discussion, and the member is digressing or repeating himself, then you would stop him or advise him not to repeat his own points. So, Madam Deputy, if you don't stop the member speaking, that implies that the content of the member speech complies with all the rules. So I don't think we can call that filibustering or not. Well, the crux of the matter is not whether it is filibustering. the crux of the matter, he's allowed to speak because he is abiding by the rules. So what's wrong with that? Well, it's not the case that we don't have a time limit, just like what's happening in other countries. The maximum time that we can speak for is 50 minutes. Why can't that be allowed? I don't get it. You said that is a waste of time. You said that you don't speak to save time for the council. If somebody would prefer not to speak and just support everything in front of him, then there's nothing much we can do about that. But as a legislator, I think we are duty-bound to do our best to give our views on some policies and bills. And he should try his best to carry out this important task given to him by his electors. And I think this is the most important point. Of course, it takes time to have discussions, but whether it's a waste, I would have to say on whether I'm wasting your time or the council's time. If you think it's a waste, then you may prefer not to speak. This is your right, and I won't force you to speak either. So it's our basic right to give our views at the council, and that should rightly be allowed. This is a chance that we should have, and we should not stop members from speaking. So whether you are talking about bringing things back to order or try to bring the council's working to the normal track, I think that there is some truth in your remarks. But I disagree with Mr. Wong Kwok Kin's interpretation of that. We are both elected members, and we should duly discharge our duties as elected members to speak our mind here. And you should not support whatever government proposes. That should not be the right approach. This is not good to the public, and is not good to the government either. The government sometimes say that they would listen to our views. They want to gauge our views before they can come up with appropriate policies or bills. So why shouldn't we do that? So I speak against Mr. Wong Kwok Kin's motion. Mr. Roy Kwong. Madam Deputy, we have had discussion in the past 2 days. The first time that I invoke 40(1) is by me. The other one is by Mr. Wong Kwok Kin. He's just invoking it for the first time in his 10 years of service. He said that he was doing it because there was a waste of time here. And for my use of 40(1), I want to give everybody a chance to speak more. And when we review the legal aid system, then we can put more pressure on the government to reform the system. In fact, the pro-establishment camp members might not support my adjournment motion, but they all agree that there should be a review on the system because this is beneficial to the society. But Mr. Wong said this time that invoking 40(1) was used many times, and it was invoked wrongly in the past. But this time round, even before we speak, you are invoking 40(1) already. And I think we should have the chance to speak on these 13 pieces of legislation. And one of the more important pieces of legislation is about Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Mr. Wong Kwok Kin has been criticizing the pan-democrats for filibustering and so on. But this is a livelihood issue, and you are now invoking 40(1). I don't know why you were the one who invoked 40(1). Well, what you meant in simple terms was you should stop speaking. The elected members, you should stop speaking. If we had already spoken, then you ask for adjournment, then this is something different. Every legislator is backed by a team of colleagues, including the assistants of the councillors. The assistants will help prepare a lot of information for the councillors to speak at this chamber. This is no easy task. The assistants have to think through the matter. They have to find all sorts of information and try to help you in expressing your views within 15 minutes. And they hope that that by this, the government will be asked to conduct a review and do something better. Now, on these 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation, our assistants have worked very hard to prepare the speech for us. And now we are not given a chance to speak. The last WhatsApp that I received was during midnight. Now, they said that there is a problem with the destination of the closed areas in relation to Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. And after Mr. James To has spoken, then Mr. Wong Kwok Kin asked for 40(1) and tried to stop everybody from speaking. I believe that this motion will be passed, but for those following the debate, I must tell you that these 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation are livelihood issues. They have to do with Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, road traffic ordinance, taxation, import and export, etc. Now, we spend billions of dollars on this white elephant project, Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, and that's been overspending. And we can voice our views here originally, but then Wong Kwok Kin asked us not to speak. And of course, I won't support this motion to adjourn. For Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, Hong Kong Port, for the 4 pieces of subsidiary legislation, they seek to designate the bridge and the Hong Kong Link Road as closed area, which facilitates the management of the area. So what problems would it create? Have there been problems in relation to closed area? Yes, there will not be. Well, in 2009 and 2017, reporters were stopped at reporting at Lowell of some protest activities. So here, we're supposed to have the chance to express our views. Now we are at the stage of 40(1). We can't have our views. And Wong Kwok Kin, you said you were right in invoking 40(1), but when we do that, you accuse us of filibustering. This is unreasonable. For the duty lawyer scheme and the legal aid scheme discussion, we have a lot more discussion. And when I voted in 40(1), we're trying to put pressure on the government. Maybe those following the debate could not understand easily. For example, in an overseas jurisdiction, when there was a huge fire, one of the ways to put it out was use water. And sometimes they were using fire to put out a fire. A team of people will rush into the scene of the fire and try to burn something down so that the fire at source could be eliminated. So I am using the same logic here. Now, when we invoke 40(1), we are not trying to trigger an argument. We invoked 40(1) because there is inadequacy in the legal aid system, so we want to put pressure on the government. But then Mr. Wong's invoking of 40(1), I find it blocking. But then he spoke out his motive very clearly. Now we aren't even given a chance to speak. So what is the point of electing us to the council? Recently, well, we were on the eve of a storm at the LegCo before the amendment of the RoP is being discussed. The democratic members have to try to resist that. This year, I move a motion on protection of animal rights, and we had a very good discussion, and the motion was unanimously passed. But then the question is, 6 pan-democrats legislators were disqualified. You have enough votes now at this juncture, and then you will try to make the best use, take the most advantage out of the situation. So the Council has been not operating in an abnormal way. But if you say that we aren't even given a chance to speak on these 13 pieces of subsidiary legislation on livelihood issue, and I think that it's abnormal. So I'm definitely against your adjournment motion, but we don't have as many votes as you have. And the price that we're paying is that we are sacrificing people's interest.
It is not just about the designation of closed areas on the bridge. It's also about security and various matters under Cap 591. Well, we have the experience in relation to Shenzhen Bay, and now with the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, there is going to be a closed area. Can't we get a chance to speak our mind? Because we already have the experience of Shenzhen Bay. Because once a closed area is designated, you won't really change it. Well, the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge is one area of the 13 motions. Well, we should give our comments so that it can be done better. But we're stopped from doing so. I can't impute a motive to another member. Well, the objective reality is that the administration doesn't have to do anything and everything will be done for them. This bridge has used a lot of our money. There is serious project cost overrun. We do need figures. We do need information so that we will know what is going on. So whenever we have a chance for members to try to get information from the administration, we should not let the chance go. We have been chasing the administration for the exact amount of project overrun. And there was an incident when there was a collapse of debris. This will at least give us a chance to speak about these matters. But now they say, don't even think about it. All you get a chance to speak on is the motion to adjourn. Is it really what will happen? If you say that Rule 40(1) is for those with more votes to decide the way and to hush the minority up, then, well, I don't agree, because that is not the objective of Rule 40(1). What happens is that we will not be able to speak on these 13 motions. The administration will be let off very gently. We won't be able to ask them for more information. When it comes to the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, on different occasions, a lot of members ask a lot of questions, valid questions, and the administration have to answer because the fact is that there is a serious project overrun. Well, I have to apologize. I have to apologize because I don't get a chance to ask questions. September 2017, there was some information about feasibility for the bridge to be commissioned in 2018, saying that there will be about 9,200 to 14,000 vehicle trips a day at the beginning of the commissioning. However, recently there was information showing that this figure may be reduced. So the forecast traffic volume will be lower than the one done in relation to the feasibility study for 2018. Well, we want to get figures, but It's the administration that has the figures, and we do need to get the information from the administration, whether you are from the opposition or from the loyalists. Mr. James Toll talked about the original intent. Well, Wong Kok Kin said he's been a legislator for 10 years, so I want to ask him, ask yourself why you became a legislator in the first place. We are here to express our views. It's easy to say less because all you need is just to press a button. Maybe in the future, you just need to read papers by circulation of papers on the email, and the next time there is no chance for us to say anything because every time we want to say something, someone will say, will use a Rule 40(1). Who abuses the rules of procedure? Who have been deprived of the natural duty of a legislator, which is to speak for the public and for the constituency, for the constituents. Of course, it is an extraordinary time. We need extraordinary measures. These 13 motions are related to livelihood issues, and we're not given a chance to speak. I think that's outrageous. I think a lot of members have done a lot of their homework to speak on the 13 subsidiary legislations. They want to get more data, say, for example, RoP and information about the Hong Kong-Macau Bridge. What is the operation? How is RoP applied? I want to know, but I'm deprived of the chance to know. There is another one. First is apology ordinance. Well, Holden Chow has been following this for a long time. I'm sure he wants to know. Well, if you don't want to know, you don't mind other members getting to know more about this, but we're not allowed to ask questions. We have a chance to speak for our constituents have been taken away from us. We have to speak for the underprivileged, but we're gagged. Is it really what is happening? This morning, we had we continued the debate on the criminal legal fees adjustment. Well, we were quite polite, and that motion to adjourn was meaningful. But now, it boils down to this: you're gagged. I can tell you that you can't stop Hong Kong people from speaking their minds. I so speak. Dr. Helena Wong.